Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're decoding the biological mechanisms and ancient wisdom behind building a routine-driven life of ultimate satisfaction. You know that feeling when your daily habits just feel like a random collection of reactions rather than a deliberate, focused system? Well, if you've been there, you are in the exact right place. We're going to see how routine isn't just some basic productivity hack, it's literally the fundamental architecture of human excellence. Let's get into it. So let's dive right into this massive question that honestly challenges pretty much everything we think we know about self-discipline. Why does sheer willpower almost always fail us? Seriously, we usually think that sticking to a goal is just a matter of trying harder, gritting your teeth. But actually, excellence is a biological system. It's not just sheer effort. When we rely solely on willpower, we're basically picking a fight with our own evolutionary biology. And spoiler alert, biology usually wins. To give you a clear roadmap of where we're headed, here is our agenda for today. First, the biology of routine. Second, wisdom, emperors to athletes. Third, engineering your habits. And finally, number 4, the ultimate goal, meaning. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the biology of routine, focusing on the brain's energy economics. Okay, check out this staggering fact. Despite making up only 2% of our total body weight, the human brain hogs 20% of our energy. It's a total energy sink. Every single time you make a conscious decision, your prefrontal cortex burns right through that precious energy budget. And the result? A massive drain we call decision fatigue. It's exactly why, by the end of the day, your brain is quite literally too exhausted to make good choices. You're running on empty. So to conserve that precious energy, our brain comes up with this brilliant workaround. It essentially shifts control away from that energy-hungry prefrontal cortex over to the basal ganglia using this 4-step habit loop. It goes like this. A cue triggers a craving, which then drives a response. And finally, boom, delivers a reward. This whole process makes our behaviors completely automatic. Once a routine gets hardwired into this loop, it takes almost zero conscious willpower to pull off. It's the reason you can drive all the way home from work and realize you barely remember the commute. Now, if you grew up hearing it takes exactly 21 days to lock in a habit, well, let's look at the actual science. Empirical studies show it actually takes an average of 66 days to reach peak automaticity. Depending on how complex the habit is, it could be anywhere from 18 to over 250 days. Your brain is out there physically rewiring its neural pathways. And, biological construction just takes time and consistency. So if you're struggling on day 30, cut yourself some slack. Your brain is literally still under construction. Moving right along to Section 2, wisdom, emperors to athletes. Let's see how the elites throughout history have handled this. It's so fascinating to see how ancient frameworks like the Ayurvedic dinacharya map perfectly onto modern chronobiology. Thousands of years ago, Ayurvedic routines suggested syncing your activities with specific times of day to match natural energies. Fast forward to today, and science tells us the exact same thing. Syncing our tasks to our biological clock, our circadian rhythms, actually stabilizes our mood, lowers anxiety, and totally optimizes our energy. The ancients essentially figured out that syncing up with nature's clock was the ultimate life hack long before we had sleep trackers. And speaking of the ancients, Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius practically weaponized morning routines through this practice called premeditatio malorum. Basically, this was a daily Stoic priming ritual where he would mentally anticipate all the difficult people and obstacles he might run into that day. By rehearsing these challenges ahead of time, he forced his brain out of a reactive state and into a proactive one. He was prepping himself to transform obstacles into advantages before he even stepped out of his bedroom. Pretty brilliant, right? Now, let's fast forward to modern peak performance. Take a look at this jaw-dropping number, $1.5 million. That is LeBron James's annual budget dedicated entirely to his body and recovery. He deeply understands that while physical training creates stress, the actual adaptation, the real growth, only happens during the recovery phase. He's not just out there working hard. He's engineered a whole system that treats recovery as literally the most critical part of his job. LeBron takes this recovery completely seriously. He's utilizing all these highly specific tools, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, cryotherapy, super precise nutrition to squash inflammation, the whole 9 yards. But here is the kicker. Despite all this insanely expensive sci-fi technology, LeBron and his trainers point out that the absolute most non-negotiable tool for tissue repair and cognitive reset is just 8 to 10 hours of sleep in a cool 68 to 70 degree room. That's it. The completely free biological foundation of his excellence. All right, let's pivot to section 3, engineering your habits, tools for change. How do we actually apply this stuff? Enter Kaizen. This is a brilliant Japanese philosophy that advocates for continuous, tiny improvements. Now, why tiny? Well, when we try to make these massive, overnight life overhauls, our brain's amygdala immediately perceives it as a threat. It triggers a fear response, which makes us freeze up or just quit entirely. Kaizen flips the script. It advocates for micro improvements so incredibly small, like doing a single push-up or reading exactly one page, that they totally bypass that fear response, keeping burnout at bay. And the math on this, it's absolutely undeniable. If you can manage just a measly 1% daily improvement, compound interest dictates you will end up nearly 38 times better in a single year. Note that, not 38% better, almost 38 times better. It's the magic of incremental change. The trick is to focus on building the momentum of simply showing up every day, rather than stressing out over the intensity of your effort. So to guarantee we actually show up for that 1%, we can leverage these 3 types of commitment devices. Basically, these add a layer of immediate, real-world cost to opting out of our long-term goals. We've got social devices, like publicly announcing your goal to your friends. Friction devices, like physically putting your phone in another room to make mindless scrolling super inconvenient. And financial devices, like prepaying for a fitness class where you literally lose your cash if you skip. They force our present, lazy selves to align with our ambitious future goals. Think about a goal you've been avoiding. Which of these 3 devices could you drop into your life today? Okay, here's another genius psychological tool: temptation bundling. This leverages what's known as Premack's principle. You essentially pair an immediate gratification want, like listening to that true crime podcast you're obsessed with a difficult, delayed reward, should, like finally hitting the gym. By strictly allowing yourself to do the fun thing only while doing the hard thing, you basically hack your brain to bypass its natural resistance to effort. It's a total game changer. Which brings us to our final section, number 4, the ultimate goal, meaning. What is all this optimization actually for? According to decades of longitudinal research, achieving true well-being requires a massive shift in how we view our lives. Look, we almost always start out with a performance mindset, right? We're driven by external benchmarks like wealth or status or promotions. But true, lasting life satisfaction requires a midlife shift over to a meaning mindset. This is where your routines are guided by internal values, emotional balance, and personal purpose, rather than just constantly competing with everyone around you. We see this perfectly in the famous 80-year Harvard study of adult development. It's one of the longest-running psychological studies in history, tracking individuals for their entire lives. And what did they find? They proved that our deepest satisfaction comes not from having perfect, stress-free lives or avoiding hardship. Actually, the happiest people were the ones who used an internal reorientation to view their lives as a coherent, meaningful narrative. They actively framed their setbacks as chapters of growth, not as failures. Dr. Robert Waldinger, who directs that very Harvard study, perfectly encapsulates this profound shift for us. He says, happiness isn't about having more. It's about caring less about the wrong things. And that hits the nail on the head. Engineering your habits isn't about turning yourself into some relentless productivity robot just so you can accumulate more stuff. No way. It's about automating the noise of life so you actually have the mental space and energy to care about the things that truly matter. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought to really spark your curiosity. Knowing what we know now, that excellence is quite literally a biological system of well-engineered routines, what will be your 1% improvement today to build a more meaningful tomorrow? How are you going to engineer your habits right now to construct your own architecture of excellence? Seriously, think about it, pick your 1%, and start building. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.